The telemetry on my main screen was a beautiful symphony of green. "Everything nominal, Bolt," I murmured, even though my service robot, SRU-7, or Bolt, as I affectionately called him, was a good 3 blocks away, diligently mapping particulate matter distribution on Primrose Lane. His forward optical sensor fed a clear, wide-angle view back to my home office. Data stream, perfect. Battery levels, optimal. GPS track, a flawless breadcrumb trail. Bolt was more than just a machine. He was years of my life, a culmination of late nights, caffeine-fueled coding sessions, and the kind of focused passion that only a robotics researcher on the cusp of a breakthrough can truly understand. He was a beautiful, magnificent, million-dollar prototype, and today, his solo run was crucial for Dr. Hay's Urban Ecosystem Grant. This was groundbreaking stuff. Then, through Bolt's unwavering eye, I saw her. A figure power-walking with the grim determination of a Roman legionary heading into battle. Karen Henderson, HOA president, bane of my quiet suburban existence, and in her hand, glinting ominously in the mid-morning sun. Good heavens, was that a sledgehammer from her meticulously organized and undoubtedly HOA regulation-violatingly oversized garden shed? A cold dread, sharp and icy, punched through my academic focus. "No, Karen," I whispered, already half out of my chair, fumbling for my shoes. "Don't you dare touch him!" But Karen dared. Before I could even form a coherent shout, Bolt's video feed showed her swinging that medieval-looking sledgehammer with a guttural grunt. There was a sickening, explosive crunch of high-impact composite materials and precision-engineered metal, a brief shower of sparks like dying fireflies, and then static, a horrifying, deafening digital scream of white noise. Bolt's telemetry flatlined. Every single beautiful green light on my control dashboard blinked, then turned a damning, accusatory blood red. He was gone. "She killed Bolt!" The words ripped from my throat, raw and disbelieving. That magnificent, custom-built prototype, the pinnacle of our lab's research, reduced to scrap by a $10 sledgehammer wielded by suburban fury. The sheer, unadulterated Luddite Philistinism of it all. I didn't remember grabbing my keys or slamming the front door. My Nikes pounded the pavement as I sprinted the 3 blocks to Primrose Lane, my lungs burning, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. And there she was, Karen Henderson, standing over Bolt's mangled, smoking chassis, the sledgehammer resting proprietorially on her shoulder. She looked proud, victorious, like she'd just single-handedly defended our cul-de-sac from a hostile alien invasion. Bolt was a tragedy. His robust outer casing, designed to withstand minor bumps and scrapes, was cracked open like a grotesque egg. Optical sensors, painstakingly calibrated, were shattered into 1,000 glittering shards. One of his delicate, multi-jointed manipulator arms, capable of handling samples with near-surgical precision, was bent backward at an impossible, heartbreaking angle. A thin wisp of acrid smoke curled from his main processing unit. "Karen?" I gasped, skidding to a halt, my voice shaking with a cocktail of disbelief, grief, and white-hot rage. "What have you done? That's invaluable university property, a vital research robot. Are you out of your mind?" Karen sniffed disdainfully, her expression one of profound self-satisfaction. "Oh, hello, Alex. Just taking care of a little HOA violation, as is my duty. This thing," she prodded Bolt's ruined frame with the toe of her sensible walking shoe, "was trespassing on common property, operating without a visible permit. And frankly, it was severely distressing Mrs. Higgins's prize-winning teacup poodle, Fifi, during her morning constitutional. Bylaw 23, subsection D, as you should well know, clearly prohibits unauthorized autonomous wheeled contrivances operating in pedestrian thoroughfares without explicit prior consent from the Architectural Review Committee. I stared at her, speechless for a moment. Autonomous wheeled contrivance? I finally choked out. It's a state-of-the-art, sophisticated research instrument, Karen. It had all the necessary university permits, registered with campus security and city liaisons. It was collecting vital environmental data for a federally funded study. It's worth more than your entire bloody house, Karen. Probably more than this entire street. Karen scoffed, a sound like air escaping a punctured, inflatable sense of superiority. Don't be absurd, Alex. It's a glorified remote-controlled toy, and an ugly one at that. And it was probably spying on us all, recording our private conversations, mapping our petunias for some nefarious government database. Good riddance, I say. I was protecting our community's privacy, and Fifi's delicate, champion-caliber nerves. She patted the head of the sledgehammer with a disturbingly affectionate gesture. My hands were trembling so hard I could barely hold my phone. I jabbed at the screen, speed-dialing Dr. Evelyn Hayes, head of the robotics department and Bolt's spiritual mother. You have absolutely no idea what you've just done, I told Karen, my voice dangerously low. Dr. Hayes is going to... Oh, God. The phone connected. Dr. Hayes, I began, my voice cracking despite my best efforts. It's Alex. There's been an incident with Bolt, a catastrophic incident. I relayed the unbelievable events, my words tumbling out in a torrent of shock and fury, Karen watching me with an expression of smug, almost beatific indifference, occasionally nodding as if confirming her own heroic actions. Dr. Hayes's reaction on the other end of the line was memorable. Her voice, usually a calm, measured alto that could dissect complex algorithms with surgical precision, went from concerned, "Alex, what's wrong?" to icy fury in approximately 0.5 seconds flat once the words Karen, sledgehammer, and Bolt completely destroyed registered. She did what, Alex? Dr. Hayes' voice was suddenly like Arctic steel, sharp enough to cut glass. With a sledgehammer? To Bolt? The SRU-7 prototype, the one incorporating the custom LiDAR array and the proprietary neural network navigation system that was funded by the DARPA Advanced Robotics Grant. Each word was enunciated with terrifying clarity. Yes, Dr. Hayes, I managed, feeling a fresh wave of nausea. It's bad. Completely, utterly destroyed. I'm looking at his internals right now. It's not pretty. Right, Dr. Hayes said, a new, chilling note of grim determination in her voice. You stay right there, Alex. Do not let that woman leave. Do not touch the robot further. I am calling University General Counsel, Dr. Armitage, right now. They have a rapid response protocol in place for critical asset destruction and malicious interference with federally funded research. You can expect our legal team on site within minutes. This isn't just vandalism, Alex. This is a direct attack on institutional research and a multi-million-dollar university asset. I was stunned by the speed and severity of her response. Minutes? The legal team? But how? No buts, Alex, Dr. Hayes cut me off, her voice leaving no room for argument. The university does not take kindly to having its flagship research projects bludgeoned in the street. Just keep her there. And Alex? Get that woman's full name, her exact address, and if she has any assets worth seizing, make a mental note, for the lawsuit. And with a decisive click, she was gone. I lowered the phone, a strange mixture of dread and vindictive anticipation swirling in my gut. Lawsuit? I muttered. Karen, who had been ostentatiously examining her fingernails during my call, looked up. Problems with your little toy, Alex? Did the batteries die? Perhaps you should invest in something more robust next time, like a nice, sturdy tricycle. I swear, It couldn't have been more than 120 seconds later. I was still trying to process Dr. Hayes's pronouncements when a sleek black sedan, the kind that usually whispers, "very important government official," or "extremely expensive lawyer who eats people like you for breakfast," glided to a silent, almost predatory stop at the curb. The doors opened with a muted thunk, and out stepped two figures who looked like they'd just beamed in from the set of a high-powered legal thriller. A stern-faced man in a flawlessly tailored charcoal suit, Mr. Thorne, and a woman with an equally impeccable navy suit and an air of razor-sharp intelligence, Miss Albright. They radiated an aura of calm, lethal competence, and both carried slim, expensive-looking leather briefcases that probably contained more legal firepower than an entire season of a network courtroom drama. Karen, who had been in the middle of lecturing me on the importance of maintaining neighborhood aesthetics and preventing robotic loitering, stopped mid-sentence, her jaw literally dropping. Her smug expression faltered, replaced by a flicker of, could it be, apprehension? Mr. Thorne, his voice smooth and professional, a finely tuned instrument of legal discourse, addressed Karen directly, his gaze unwavering. "Mrs. Karen Henderson, I presume? My name is Marcus Thorne, and this is my colleague, Miss Eleanor Albright. We are senior legal counsel representing the Board of Trustees of name of prestigious university." Karen blinked, her mouth opening and closing a few times like a beached goldfish. University? Lawyers? What on earth is the meaning of this? This is an internal homeowners association matter. This young man's, his unapproved device, was in clear violation of multiple established community bylaws. Miss Albright, without a word, stepped forward and handed Karen a thick sheaf of official-looking documents, bound with a prominent blue legal ribbon. Her voice, when she spoke, was cool, precise, and utterly devoid of warmth. "Mrs. Henderson, you are hereby served with a temporary restraining order, effective immediately, prohibiting any further contact with university personnel or property. You are also served with a cease and desist notification regarding any further interference with ongoing university research activities. Furthermore, this is a formal notice of intent to pursue civil litigation for the malicious and willful destruction of University Research Asset SRU-7, also known as BOLT, preliminarily valued in excess of $1.2 million US, pending full damage assessment. Finally, this document constitutes a legal demand for the preservation of all evidence related to this incident, including, but not limited to, the instrument used in the aforementioned destruction, which we understand to be a sledgehammer." Karen stared at the documents clutched in her suddenly trembling hand, as if they were written in ancient Sumerian and pulsing with a faint, malevolent green light. $1.2 million, she finally croaked, her voice barely a whisper. Her eyes flickered from the papers to Bolt's mangled remains, then to the grimly impassive faces of the lawyers. "For that thing." Mr. Thorne allowed himself a small, chillingly polite smile. "That thing, Mrs. Henderson, was a critical, unique, and irreplaceable component of a multi-year, federally funded research project with significant national implications. Its destruction has incurred not only substantial financial losses, but also irretrievable academic and scientific damages. We trust you will secure competent legal representation without delay. You and your homeowners association will be hearing from us further, in great detail. Good day?" The lawyers didn't raise their voices. They didn't need to. Their words, delivered with the calm precision of neurosurgeons, had done more damage to Karen's composure than her sledgehammer had done to Bolt. And that was saying something. Just as Mr. Thorne and Miss Albright were making their crisp, professional departure, a local police cruiser rolled to a stop behind their black sedan. Someone, probably a bewildered neighbor peeking through their blinds, or perhaps even Karen herself in a misguided attempt to paint herself as the victim of a rogue robot and aggressive lawyers, had finally called the cops. And wouldn't you know it, out stepped officers Miller and Davies, the Laurel and Hardy of our local constabulary, looking even more world-weary and resigned than usual. They were clearly destined to be the official chroniclers of Karen Henderson's escalating reign of suburban chaos. Officer Miller surveyed the scene, Bolt's mangled corpse, the rapidly gathering crowd of curious and somewhat horrified neighbors, me looking like I'd just seen a ghost, Karen clutching a thick legal document and looking like she was about to faint, and the retreating forms of the impeccably dressed university lawyers. He let out a low whistle. "All right, folks. What's the... Whoa." He spotted the full extent of Bolt's metallic carnage. "What in the Sam Hill happened here? Mr. Johnson, is this about those darn wind chimes again? Mrs. Henderson file another noise complaint?" "Not exactly, Officer Miller," I said, my voice still a bit shaky but now underscored by a grim sort of satisfaction. "Mrs. Henderson here just took it upon herself to destroy a $1.2 million university research robot with a sledgehammer, as you do." Officer Davies, who was taking in the scene with a look of profound skepticism, actually scoffed. "$1 million robot, son? Come on now. What really happened here? Did someone's souped-up lawnmower get into a fight with a mailbox?" Before I could respond, Miss Albright, who had apparently decided to linger to ensure a smooth transition of authority, stepped forward again, her professional demeanor unwavering. "Officers, Eleanor Albright, Senior Counsel for name of prestigious university. The university is indeed pressing charges for felony destruction of state and federally funded property against Mrs. Karen Henderson. This unit," she gestured with a perfectly manicured hand towards Bolt's tragic remains, SRU-7, is a unique, custom-fabricated research asset. Its destruction represents a catastrophic loss for an ongoing scientific endeavor. We have already served Mrs. Henderson with notice of impending civil action and a restraining order." Officer Miller looked from Miss Albright to Karen, who was now a rather alarming shade of greenish-white. "Ma'am," he said, his voice taking on a new, more serious tone. Did you actually hit a robot with a sledgehammer?" Karen, her voice trembling, could only resort to her usual script, though it sounded significantly less convincing this time. "It was an unauthorized autonomous wheeled contrivance," she insisted weakly. "It was a menace to public safety. It was probably spying on our children. Bylaw 23, subsection D clearly states." Mr. Thorne, who had also paused by his car, added smoothly, "We have strong reason to believe, officers, that the robot's internal data recorder and multiple optical sensors may have captured the entirety of the incident, including Mrs. Henderson's actions and any contemporaneous statements she may have made. We would formally request that your forensics team secure the SRU-7's remains, and of course the, weapon used in its decommissioning as crucial evidence." The officers exchanged a long, significant look. The mention of felony, federally funded, forensics, and most importantly, university lawyers, had clearly shifted this from a run-of-the-mill neighborhood squabble into something far more complex and potentially explosive. Their initial dismissiveness evaporated, replaced by a reluctant, by-the-book seriousness. The police started cordoning off the area around Bolt's chassis with yellow crime scene tape, much to the consternation of Mrs. Higgins, who was trying to walk Fifi, who, I noted, looked remarkably untraumatized, and was now forced to detour onto the grass. Another university vehicle arrived shortly thereafter, this one a nondescript white van with Name of prestigious university robotics laboratory, mobile engineering unit, stenciled discreetly on its side. A team of serious-looking technicians in matching navy blue lab coats carefully began to document and collect Bolt's remains, under the watchful eyes of the lawyers, the police, and a growing gaggle of very interested neighbors. Every shard of shattered composite, every broken sensor, every tragically bent piece of high-tensile alloy was photographed, labeled, and gently placed into evidence bags or custom-padded containers. It was like watching an archaeological dig, except the artifact was a piece of my soul. The lead technician, a woman named Sarah, whom I knew from the lab, gave me a grim, sympathetic look as she carefully disconnected a severed data cable. The primary data core looks compromised, Alex, she said quietly, her voice full of professional regret. The outer casing is breached right above it. We'll do our absolute best at the lab, run every diagnostic we have, but a direct kinetic impact of that magnitude on a sensitive array. She shook her head. Years of irreplaceable environmental data. Thousands of hours of unique observations. Gone. Wiped out in an instant of ignorant rage because of Karen Henderson and Fifi the Poodle's allegedly delicate nerves. The sheer, senseless waste of it all made me want to punch something. Preferably something large, inanimate, and sledgehammer-proof. The next few days were a blur of police statements, insurance adjusters, from the university's side, looking very grim indeed, and the meticulous, heartbreaking process of Bolt's post-mortem examination back at the university robotics lab. I was there, of course, alongside Dr. Hayes and the lead engineering team, as they carefully disassembled Bolt's ravaged frame on a brightly lit workbench. It felt less like an engineering analysis, and more like attending an autopsy for a beloved, if somewhat metallic, family member. Dr. Hayes, her face a mask of controlled fury, pointed to a shattered, almost unrecognizable tangle of wires and optics. That, she said, her voice tight, was the custom-built atmospheric particle scanner. We had it fabricated to our precise specifications by a specialist firm in Germany. Cost just over $80,000 to integrate and calibrate. It's irreplaceable in the short term, probably a 9-month lead time for a new one, assuming they can even source the rare earth elements for the sensors again. And the continuous data it collected over the past 6 months for the Clean Air Initiative grant, Dr. Lee from Environmental Sciences believes it's likely corrupted beyond any hope of recovery due to the damage to the primary storage buffer. Sarah, the lead tech, sighed, gently probing a fractured circuit board with a delicate instrument. The main logic board is completely fractured in 3 places, Dr. Hayes, and the impact shock appears to have wiped the solid-state memory buffer clean. We might get some fragmented telemetry from the redundant failsafe recorder if its casing held, but honestly, it's not looking good. So all those nocturnal ozone readings we were collecting over the Blackwood Marsh Preservation Area? I asked, my voice hollow. The ones we needed to correlate with the migratory bird nesting patterns? All gone? Dr. Hayes nodded grimly, her lips a thin, hard line. Gone, along with our best chances of meeting the Phase 2 grant objectives on schedule. This isn't just about the monetary cost of the hardware, Alex, though that is, as you know, astronomical. This is a significant, potentially crippling setback for vital environmental research. Years of work, up in smoke, because of one woman's... what? Ignorance? Malice? The following days were a maelstrom of damage control. Dr. Hayes and I were practically living in the lab and her office, fueled by lukewarm coffee and righteous indignation, trying to figure out if any minuscule part of Bolt's research objectives could be salvaged or replicated using other, far less advanced university equipment. This involved a flurry of increasingly desperate calls to other departments. No, Professor Jenkins, we can't just borrow your weather drone. it doesn't have the right particulate sensors, and even to external commercial contractors for emergency rentals of specialized sensor arrays or advanced data recovery attempts on the off chance anything was salvageable from Bolt's shattered memory cores. I remember one particularly surreal phone call with a bemused-sounding representative from a company that rented out high-end environmental monitoring units. "Yes," I said, trying to keep my voice professional and not betray the sheer insanity of the situation. "We need an urgent price quote for the immediate rental of 3 mobile air quality monitoring units, preferably with integrated GPS logging and real-time telemetry uplink capabilities." Why the sudden emergency? Well, you see, our primary autonomous data collection platform unexpectedly encountered a significant percussive disassembly event at the hands of a local homeowners association president. With a sledgehammer. There was a long, pregnant pause on the other end of the line. Then, the contractor's voice, hesitant and laced with disbelief. "Sir, forgive me for asking, but is this a prank call? Or are you involved in some kind of experimental demolition derby for robots?" The ripple effects of Karen's little rampage were spreading, creating waves of disbelief and gallows humor throughout the local scientific and technical communities. Meanwhile, back in the tranquil, sledgehammer-free cul-de-sacs of Sunny Meadows Estates, Karen Henderson, despite having been served with enough terrifying legal documents to wallpaper her prize-winning powder room, was not going down without a fight. Or at least without a lot of shrill, self-justifying squawking. A sympathetic, read equally clueless and terrified neighbor on the HOA board later recounted the details of an emergency war council Karen had convened in her living room. Apparently, Karen, high on indignation and possibly cheap Chardonnay, had tried to frame herself as a valiant community crusader, a veritable Joan of Arc who had single-handedly protected Sunny Meadows from a rogue, possibly dangerous university experiment that was almost certainly spying on our children and plotting to steal our fiestaware. She wildly misrepresented the situation, waved around a copy of the HOA bylaws like it was the Dead Sea Scrolls, appealed to every paranoid privacy concern imaginable, and quoted entirely irrelevant sections about unleashed pets and unseemly lawn ornaments. This so-called research robot, which I have on good authority, was not even properly licensed to operate within a designated, quiet enjoyment zone, such as ours, Karen had apparently declared, thumping her fist on a stack of outdated community newsletters, was clearly exceeding its operational mandate. It was mapping our private properties, recording our innocent backyard conversations, undoubtedly cataloging our rose bushes for some nefarious horticultural database. Bylaw 12, Section A, Paragraph 4, explicitly states, and I quote, "No aerial, terrestrial, or subterranean surveillance equipment, whether for private or institutional use, shall be operated within the delineated boundaries of Sunny Meadows Estates without the express written consent of the Architectural Review Committee, a copy of which must be displayed prominently on said equipment. And I, as your duly elected president and protector of our sacred community standards, took decisive, if regrettably necessary, action to neutralize this invasive technological threat." The other HOA board members, particularly our long-suffering treasurer Bob, who had apparently spent the intervening days frantically Googling terms like university litigation deep pockets, HOA insurance coverage willful destruction, and can I sell my house and flee the country before they seize my assets, were reportedly starting to look various shades of green around the gills. The true financial and legal precipice upon which Karen had gleefully shoved their entire homeowners association was rapidly becoming terrifyingly clear. Treasurer Bob, a mild-mannered accountant who usually only got agitated about misplaced receipts for the annual Petunia Planting Fund, finally found his voice, albeit a shaky one. "Karen," he'd reportedly stammered, clutching a printout from the HOA's insurance policy, like a drowning man clutching a very small, very unhelpful twig. "Karen, I've just had a rather unsettling conversation with Mr. Periwinkle from our insurance brokers. He said our standard general liability and officer misconduct policy might," and he stressed might, not fully cover, and I quote, "deliberate and unsanctioned altercations with multi-million-dollar university-owned advanced robotic research apparatuses involving the application of excessive blunt force trauma by an elected official." He used the term significant seven-figure exposure, Karen. And then he made a strange gurgling noise and suggested we all update our wills. The HOA's internal infrastructure, built on a shaky foundation of bake sales and bylaw bickering, was beginning to crack under the immense, unforeseen pressure of Karen's robotic rampage. The financial stakes for the entire community were suddenly, starkly apparent, and the internal HOA dynamics were shifting faster than alliances on a reality TV show. Karen's reign as the undisputed queen of the cul-de-sac was looking increasingly precarious. The next official salvo from the university arrived with all the pomp and circumstance of a medieval executioner delivering a royal decree. A very serious-looking, very burly process server, who looked like he moonlighted as a bouncer for a particularly exclusive nightclub, hand-delivered a new, even thicker set of documents to Karen Henderson on her perfectly manicured, if now somewhat infamous, front porch. I didn't see it myself, but Mrs. Henderson, the nice one from next door to Karen, gave me a gleeful blow-by-blow account later, her eyes sparkling with schadenfreude. This time it was a formal subpoena compelling Karen's attendance at a deposition at the university's imposing downtown legal offices. Accompanying the subpoena was a multi-hundred-page preliminary statement of damages, meticulously itemizing every single custom-fabricated component of Bolt, every lost hour of my research time, every specialist's consultation fee, every potential grant penalty, and even the projected cost of therapeutic counseling for distressed robotics graduate students. Okay, I might have added that last bit in my head, but the rest was terrifyingly real. The grand total, even at this preliminary stage, was a number that could comfortably purchase a small, privately owned island in a warmer climate, or several Ferraris. Mrs. Henderson reported that Karen's face, upon reading the figure, went a shade of white previously unknown to medical science. The deposition room, when the day finally arrived, was exactly as intimidating as you'd imagine. A vast, polished mahogany table that seemed to stretch for miles, high-backed leather chairs that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and an atmosphere so frigid it could have flash-frozen a woolly mammoth. I was there, naturally, alongside a steely-eyed Dr. Hayes. Flanking us were Mr. Thorne and Miss Albright, the university's legal eagles, looking even sharper and more predatory in their home environment. A stenographer sat poised at one end of the table, her fingers hovering over her little machine like a concert pianist about to unleash a particularly complex sonata. Karen arrived a few minutes late, looking flustered and considerably less self-assured than usual. She was accompanied by a bewildered-looking local lawyer, a Mr. Pringle, whose crumpled suit and slightly panicked expression suggested he normally specialized in slip-and-fall cases at the Piggly Wiggly, and deeply, profoundly regretted taking Karen Henderson's desperate, tearful phone call. He looked like a goldfish that had just been unexpectedly dropped into a shark tank. The questioning began. Miss Albright led the charge, her voice calm, precise, and utterly relentless. "Mrs. Henderson," she began, after the initial pleasantries and swearing in were dispensed with, "you stated in your initial police report, and I quote, that the University Research Unit SRU-7 was trespassing on common association property. Could you please indicate for the record which specific, clearly demarcated private property line the SRU-7 crossed, and provide the relevant Sunny Meadows Estates Homeowners Association documentation that grants you, personally, the authority to disable, dismantle, or otherwise destroy private or institutional property for such an alleged infraction. Karen, visibly flustered, stammered, "Well, it was on the sidewalk. That's common property maintained by the HOA, and it was lurking, moving suspiciously." Mr. Thorne then leaned forward, his voice a soft, dangerous purr. "Lurking, Mrs. Henderson? The SRU-7 was operating under a documented and pre-filed ground operations plan, a copy of which was provided to the city authorities and the university campus security, and was publicly available upon request for the explicit and sole purpose of environmental atmospheric data collection. A project, I might add, designed to be beneficial to this very community by monitoring air quality. Were you, or any member of your HOA board, aware of this publicly filed operations plan?" "No one tells the HOA anything," Karen insisted, her voice rising in pitch. "It looked suspicious. It didn't have a little flag on it like the lawn service uses, and it was making a funny whirring noise." Dr. Hayes then spoke, her voice quiet but carrying an immense weight of academic gravitas and barely suppressed fury. "Mrs. Henderson," she said, fixing Karen with a gaze that could have frozen lava, "that suspicious thing making a funny whirring noise was in the process of collecting critical data that could have significantly advanced our understanding of urban airborne allergens and pollutants, potentially benefiting hundreds of asthma sufferers and children with respiratory conditions in this very neighborhood. It was also field testing a next-generation autonomous navigation system, a system designed with the ultimate goal of allowing similar robots to one day safely and reliably deliver essential medical supplies and assistance to homebound elderly or disabled individuals. Its violent and senseless destruction has set back that vital research by at least 18 months, voided an irreplaceable dataset, and potentially jeopardized millions of dollars in future grant funding. How do you respond to that?" Karen just stared at her, speechless. Mr. Pringle, her lawyer, was frantically scribbling notes on a legal pad, his expression growing increasingly grim. But the university's legal team had saved their best, or rather, worst, for last. Mr. Thorne nodded to a technician, who dimmed the lights. A large monitor at one end of the conference room flickered to life. "Mrs. Henderson," Thorne said, "the SRU-7, like all our advanced research platforms, is equipped with multiple data recorders, including forward-facing optical and audio sensors. Our technicians, despite the extensive damage, managed to recover a few corrupted seconds from its primary event log, its final moments, as it were. We'd like to play that for you now." The recovered footage was grainy, a little shaky, but horrifyingly clear. It showed Karen Henderson's furious, contorted face filling the frame as she advanced on the bolt. Her voice, tinny but unmistakable, was clearly audible from Bolt's microphone. "You infernal machine!" she was shouting. "Take this, you council spy! You won't be scaring Fifi anymore." Then, the screen filled with the descending arc of the sledgehammer, followed by a sickening crunch and an explosion of static. The lights came up. The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by the quiet, rhythmic tapping of the stenographer's keys. Mr. Thorne's voice was deceptively mild. "Mrs. Henderson, is that your voice on the recording, referring to the SRU-7 as an infernal machine and a council spy? And is that you, wielding the sledgehammer that delivered the fatal blow?" Karen stared at the now blank screen, her face ashen. Her mouth opened, then closed. Mr. Pringle, her unfortunate lawyer, leaned over and whispered frantically in her ear. He then cleared his throat and announced, his voice tight with strain, My client will be exercising her right to remain silent on that particular matter at this juncture. We request a brief recess. The university had its smoking gun, or, in this case, its smoking sledgehammer. The deposition had been a brutal, systematic dismantling of Karen Henderson's already flimsy justifications. Her little kingdom of bylaws and bluster had crumbled under the sheer, overwhelming weight of institutional power and irrefutable evidence. Following the deposition, which had clearly established Karen's intent and the full extent of her bizarre reasoning, or lack thereof, the university's legal team issued its formal settlement demand. It was, to put it mildly, a number with an alarming number of zeros attached to it. Enough to cover the complete rebuild of Bolt, the lost research hours, the jeopardized grant milestones, punitive damages, and, I suspect, enough left over to fund a new wing for the robotics department, possibly to be named the Karen Henderson Memorial Wing for the advancement of sledgehammer-resistant technology. The Sunny Meadows Estates, HOA's insurance company, after reviewing the deposition transcripts and, most damningly, Bolt's final heroic recording, went into immediate meltdown. Their initial bluster about contributory negligence and unforeseen robotic encounters quickly evaporated. They eventually offered a settlement, a fraction of what the university was demanding, citing Karen's clearly willful and malicious misconduct as grounds to significantly limit their liability under the HOA's policy. The implication was clear. Karen Henderson, and potentially the HOA board members who had failed to rein her in, were now staring down the barrel of personal financial ruin to cover the massive shortfall. Karen's unraveling was swift and dramatic. The HOA board, in a hastily convened emergency session from which Karen was pointedly excluded, formally and publicly censured her for actions detrimental to the financial stability and reputation of the Sunny Meadows Estates community. They stripped her of her presidency, all committee roles, and even her coveted parking spot by the community pool. A groveling public apology was issued to the university, to Dr. Hayes, and to me personally, along with a promise of full cooperation in all remedial efforts. They also, much to the outrage of every other homeowner, announced the immediate levying of a special emergency levy for unforeseen robotic incidents and associated legal catastrophes. This went down about as well as a lead balloon in a hurricane. The community forum exploded with rage, finger-pointing, and demands for Karen's public tarring and feathering. Metaphorically speaking, of course, mostly. Dr. Hayes, meanwhile, ever the pragmatist and relentless innovator, had already secured emergency discretionary funding from the university dean. She fast-tracked the development and construction of SRU-8, the next-generation service robot, which the lab team immediately and unanimously nicknamed Bolt Phoenix, in honor of its fallen predecessor. Bolt Phoenix would rise from the ashes of Karen's folly, stronger, better, and significantly more resilient. Bolt Phoenix, Dr. Hayes informed me with a grim, determined smile during one of our design review meetings, will incorporate a number of enhanced features. A significantly reinforced chassis constructed from a new carbon-titanium composite, triple redundant data cores with encrypted off-site backup. And, she paused, a mischievous glint in her eye, a new audio deterrent system. If its proximity sensors detect a rapid, aggressive approach by an individual wielding a blunt instrument and exhibiting signs of irrational hostility or excessive perm solution, it will emit a 150 decibel recording of selected passages from the university's intellectual property rights and trespass abatement charter. And perhaps, she added thoughtfully, some particularly screechy Wagnerian opera that should give anyone pause. I love it, I said, a genuine smile finally breaking through my weeks of stress and frustration. Bolt would have loved it. The research would continue. Stronger, wiser, and now with a legendary campus origin story attached to its name. Months later, Primrose Lane basked in the late summer sun. Bolt Phoenix, gleaming and formidable, made its maiden operational voyage down the very same sidewalk where its predecessor had met its untimely end. Neighbors emerged from their houses, not with suspicion or annoyance, but with a mixture of awe, newfound respect, and perhaps just a little healthy trepidation. Someone, I suspect it was the Hendersons, the nice ones, even left a small bouquet of wildflowers by our mailbox, with a little card signed simply, "From the Friends of Scientific Progress," and Fifi, who, for the record, was never actually scared of Bolt the First, just curious. Karen Henderson's house, a few doors down, sported a discreet but unmistakable "For Sale by Owner," price drastically reduced motivated seller, sign out front. She was rarely seen outdoors anymore. When she was usually scurrying from her front door to her car, she looked like a ghost of her former, officious, clipboard-wielding self, subdued, diminished, and pointedly avoiding eye contact with anyone, especially me or any robot-shaped objects. The reign of Karen was well and truly over. The neighborhood dynamic had irrevocably shifted. Technology, reason, and a very determined university legal team had, it seemed, prevailed. My research was back on track, albeit with a significant delay and a mountain of paperwork. Dr. Hayes was already talking about applying for new grants, incorporating the lessons learned from the SRU-7 incident into future risk mitigation strategies. Bolt Phoenix, meanwhile, was performing flawlessly, its array of advanced sensors whirring contentedly as it collected data, contributing to a better understanding of our urban environment. I stood on my porch, watching Bolt Phoenix trundle past Karen's house on its way to the Blackwood Marsh Preservation Area. Its new, slightly more robust chassis gleamed in the afternoon light. Its sensors, I knew, were recording everything with crystal clarity. "You know," I murmured to myself, a faint smile playing on my lips, "I almost feel sorry for her. Almost." Bolt Phoenix smoothly navigated around Mrs. Higgins' teacup poodle, Fifi, who actually wagged her tail this time, and continued on its mission. Dr. Hayes told me yesterday, I mused, that Bolt Phoenix's new Karen proximity sensor is working flawlessly. Apparently, it automatically switches its internal recorders to 8K ultra-high definition and cross-references local salon databases for excessive perm solution orders if it detects any individual matching her description and exhibiting signs of righteous indignation or wielding gardening implements in a threatening manner within a preset 10-foot radius. Yeah, Bolt would have definitely loved that.